If you liked this episode of the Hockey IQ podcast, please leave a like, a comment, and especially review our podcast. If you truly listened all the way to the end and you're listening to this right now, you enjoyed this episode. Please go and give it a 5-star review. That helps us out more than you know. Thank you so much and look forward to the next one. On the Hockey IQ podcast today, we bring on Calvin Simon of Shakopee. Already terrible with my
That's great.
pronunciations. Shako. All right, I've already
Shakopee.
butch Shakopee, which I said correct before we started, and suddenly we're rolling, and I can't do it. Super excited to have you on. Saw what you were doing up there in Minnesota, and then I linked that to like, oh, he's also a follower of the newsletter and everything. Like, really have to dive into a conversation together. So, Calvin, thanks for coming on.
Greg, thanks for having me. Yeah, long time listener, first time caller. So excited to hang out with you, man.
So from all of my research and just watching even the I think it's called Dream State um, up there from the Minnesota Wild, the one thing that was a continuous theme around you was natural leader.
Hmm.
Um, do you feel like you're a natural leader? Has it come easier? Is it something you've worked on? Because time and time again that came through.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know if I'm the one to quantify that. I think I enjoy leadership roles and opportunities. I think that stems from just I enjoy mentoring, I enjoy helping, I enjoy getting involved. Sometimes, more than I bite off more than I can chew and, and volunteer and get involved in things. But yeah, I've always been an outgoing type of person and get myself involved and I also have an opinion and the way I think it should maybe go. So yeah, natural, sometimes forced, but I enjoy leadership. I enjoy learning from other leaders. I enjoy learning and growing in any way I can and leadership something that, I probably spend more time reading or listening to on how I can show up and be better in that regard.
Yeah, leadership's an interesting one because there's so many styles that you can do. You can lead from the front and like pull people along, but then you can also push them from behind and get them uncomfortable and into their own. So I'm curious from your vantage point, like what's kind of that dynamic between the pull and the push of leadership? Because obviously the ultimate for coaches is like basically make ourselves redundant where the group's leading themselves, but there's the reasons why, football coaches now are making 10 million plus. Like
Yeah.
clearly there's a value of having someone at the stern here.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite words is both, and so I would, use that in this regard. I think leading from the front, obviously, there's times you got to be visible. You got to, be the one walking the walk and talking the talk. I think there's also, times to lead from the back too, and let everyone else eat first and get theirs. And so sometimes, like, here's something we'll do. To start a practice, in season, and even now in our summer skates, I will intentionally, I'm there, I'm in the coach's office, I'm ready to go, but I will intentionally, if the session starts at like today, we had a skate at 7:30 and 9 a.m. and I didn't step on the ice until 7:35 or 9:05. I gave the kids space for 5 minutes to just connect with the ice, to skate, to do their thing, let them eat, let them get what they need out of it. And then when we get out there, it's right to shin tapping and hanging out and making sure everybody's good, trying to have a just quick connection with everyone. And then now let's go. Now you're going to do what I want you to do, but I'll also take feedback. For example, like we're doing our first drill. And we're getting into it, and you can start to feel like, okay, guys are starting to take a knee in line. All right, that's a cue. They're telling me, hey, this is starting to beat on us. Maybe that's the goal, maybe that's not. And this one, it wasn't. It was just a warm up. So take that as feedback and move forward. So yeah, again, like that's my point. It's both. There's a time and place for all of it. You kind of just got to go off a gut feel. I'm a big fan of just like trust your gut, do what you think is right for the group, and be willing to make those mistakes and then reflect and learn from it.
Okay, well, we'll get into reflection because that's super important for all of us to do. But the one piece I want to take out of what you just said here was like you have a calmness about it of like, yeah, we need to get things done, but my job is also to lean back, maybe, lean back on the boards, literally or metaphorically, and really just observe the group and try to figure out where is the group, what do they need, like what's going on, and therefore that's where we can truly meet them where they're at and pull or push them where they need to go. um, and just that power of observation and not
Hmm.
just taking and driving and forcing everything your way, but having that flexibility to take in so much information. What is it? Is it actual feedback you're asking for? Or is it just stuff you're noticing?
Yeah, totally. And I think, the best leaders are the best listeners. And, at the high school level, I'm dealing with, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and they're not the best communicators. They're not great at telling us what they want, what they need, what they're seeing, how they're feeling. Sometimes you really got to pull it out of them. But that's where, again, like you said, observation is so valuable. Sometimes they don't need to say a word. Sometimes just their body language. Are they having fun? And just little simple one word, two word, three word comments or questions to them can get them to open up and give you some feedback. Hey, do you guys like that one? What'd you like about it? That type of thing can, get you to understand what they like, how we can keep pushing them. We have a bunch of core values in our program. I don't want to go too deep in that unless you want to, but the first one is by intentionally passion. And it's basically the prerequisite to me to being good at anything. If you don't love what you're doing, it's gonna be really difficult to grind through the dog days, right? And so you try and make sure that you're keeping that at the forefront of your mind while you're pushing guys. Like at the end of the day, I still want them to love this game. When they wake up tomorrow, I want them to love coming to the rink. I want them to love to be around each other. And so you got to, balance that out of how hard can I push them so that I'm getting them uncomfortable, getting them to go for it maybe harder than they otherwise would, but not so hard that they're like, I got to go to practice tomorrow, or I got to go to, that skate, or I got to go deal with coach tomorrow. That's kind of the balance.
And it's such a tough thing too, because you can see the more, like, or you've seen someone who's done more, or like knows that path, and you're trying to show them what's possible without like completely burning them out. Because you can talk about it all day long, but sometimes it's like, okay, guys, like we just need to do the work, and we can just shut up for a bit and just get serious. Like it's not punishment. Like this is good for
Right.
you. Like we're going for a mile run and who can do it the fastest, not because we want to punish you, but because this is going to help. This is going to
Right.
assist, and like understanding sometimes um that like the monotony of being good at anything in life. There's things that we all hate doing in our daily lives that just suck. But if you want to have any semblance of like whether it be self-respect or just like hitting a standard that you enjoy hitting, um, or expect of yourself or others, like you got to just bear down sometimes and realize it's part of it. And passion will see me through. Um, but also like how do you feed your own passion? Like bring the passion with you. Like you, I've never seen someone get a promotion by sucking the job that they're currently in. Like you still got to
Right.
bring the passion and show, yes, I can handle this and more. So like,
That's
how do
right.
you? So I know I just unboxed a few different items, so feel free to grab on any of those because it's such an interesting piece of like you've got to push the kids, show them that new standard, a higher standard than what they've ever seen or known or really felt or truly embraced, while also feeding the passion where they're invested and they're not just engaged.
Yeah, well, I think, there's group needs and there's also individual needs, right? And that's beyond the development of the skill sets, the skating, the stick handling, etc. There's also just like, some guys, are coming from maybe a home situation where they have to lean in more. They have to help out around the house, or they maybe have to have a job, or they have to, whatever, the responsibilities are significantly higher. And so, or the pressure is really high. They've got these, grades they've got to keep up to get into this school or do the things. And so for them, hockey is just purely a release. Like I just need to get away from the world. And there's others who are like, they're bored all day, and they can't wait to get there. We have kids in different situations. Some do virtual online school for the whole day. They're at home a lot. They're self-study and self-pace, and some kids are at the building all day long. So and then it's like it's completely different vibe they bring to the rink based on their needs. So there's always the group, like how can I push the group? how can we help them get what the group needs? And sometimes that can be boring because not every guy needs those things, but also making sure like individually they're walking away with, getting their cups filled up in the way that they need it. Some come with cups really full, so they don't need as much, and you got to lean into some of the other guys in that. And that's, the passion part to me should be a prerequisite, but at the same time, that cup, like I referenced, isn't going to be as full every day for every guy. It's going to kind of change and flow. So if the cup's low, I'm probably not pushing, right? I'm probably not getting after him. I'm probably more leaning in and connecting with him about nothing to do with hockey, and getting him to just be in a place where he feels safe and can really just, relax and get after it. Not relax, but, feel not pressured.
Yeah, feel at home where you're like you're not in a stressful situation to the point where it's detrimental to your behaviors. Like you got to have like that, whether it be like a psychological safety in some shape or form, where you can be your
Exactly.
best self. Like you can just be yourself. Yeah, I remember that kind of similar situation early on in my career of coaching. Of like, you always see coaches getting on players' asses, which oftentimes they do need. But I remember like it was just
Right.
one time this kid just randomly is like he just lashed out at one of his teammates and they were going hard at it. But like he's someone who would always go hard but never cross the line. And that day he just like lost it and they were pushing and shoving and getting words. So after like the head guy was like, all right, I'm like basically preparing to give him, his mind. And
Yeah,
as soon as he comes in, I'm like, I'm just gonna cut this off. Like, dude, what's going on? Kid opens up immediately, way more like going on behind the scenes and just tough situation at home. That was really the issue. And he just brought it to the rink with him because he's having a rough time, like a little rough little phase of life. And just like to your point, like asking those little questions, whether it be the 5 minutes going up before you go into what you want to get done, like it's 5 minutes that a lot of times you're like, oh, that's, XYZ dollars in your area, but super valuable in the whole picture of getting the best and taking care of your people.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. I got two thoughts and one's a story. So we had a player a couple of seasons ago who was an impact player for us, a strong player, and he would be a bear at practices to be around, grouchy, yelling, screaming, disrespectful to different guys as the practice would go on. And then the guys would just get after him to just see how long it would take to get the ticking time bomb to explode, right? And they're getting after him, and we pull him in like, dude, like this is getting out of control. Like, what's going on? And it's a little bit softer of a conversation. We're trying to get him to open up, and we find out he's hungry. It's literally just he's hungry. So now we keep a supply of food for the rest of that season to just be like, hey, come in here real quick. He comes to the coach's room like, hey, eat this snack real quick before we go out there. And it changed everything. Now all of a sudden, like the same guy who would snap at everyone is no longer snapping at everyone on every occasion because he's getting food, and he's now communicating his actual challenges. Well, coach, I didn't like lunch. The lunch is terrible and I don't have money to get the other stuff, and I come right from school, and all these things. So sometimes to the point we're making here is just, communicating with the guys on an individual basis can really open up and solve other problems that are creating bigger problems in your locker room and with your team dynamics.
Basic human needs
Right.
always comes back to it. I love that. Yeah. He's just hungry. No big deal. I mean, I don't know about everyone else, but we all have those people in our life. They get a little hangry.
That's right. Well,
That's normal.
I had a moment, one time as a player where coach, my high school head coach, was getting after me. I mean, he was a hard-nosed coach. This was a time when you couldn't really go complain to your parents about school or anything really. And so he's getting after me, and I just break down, start crying. And that's, at this age, I'm not really a crier. And now he's just like, oh my God, you're so soft. I know that's what he's thinking. We've had the conversation since. And he's like, dude, like, I wasn't even mad at you. And I'm like, yeah, I know my grandpa died today. So it's like that's a whole nother avenue, right? And he's like, "Oh, dude, you should have told me that." And I was like, "I'm just trying to get away from it, and I can't, I'm just trying to, not think about it for an hour, but here I am thinking about it and breaking down." So
Yeah.
again, sometimes, guys are going through things and they're battling stuff, and so yeah, we have to have that empathy, but also sometimes guys are just being being lazy or being donkeys. And so sometimes they do need that push and you need to get after them. You need to have a little bit stronger, correction. And that's just knowing your players. That takes a lot of time and investment. And I think any good coach, we're all working to try and do that with our guys.
Yeah. Another thing I saw and I noticed, and I think you do really well, is like you lay out the realities for the group. Like basically starting a lot of your discussions and talks or where you want to go with things, basically laying out, okay, here's the set of facts that we're dealing with as individuals, as a group, etc. Here's what needs to happen, and then opening up where we've got maybe different voices in the room. It could be coming from the team, coming from your assistants. But I think that's often a piece I see missing whenever I've observed other coaches is like they're just on to the next thing so much that they forget to just like lay out, okay, what do we have right now? Let's set the standards, let's set the scene for the next piece. Um, Curious, is that something you've seen done before? And obviously, you're clearly not scared of all of the other voices in the room, and really empowering them to say their piece.
Though I'll start where you ended. Empowering your coaches and your players to communicate to each other, to the coaches, to the players, etc., is so important. And like guys are gonna maybe say things that are the wrong things, and they're gonna maybe make some mistakes. They're gonna, like that's maybe not the right time for that. That becomes a teachable moment. That becomes an opportunity for them to learn and grow. But they get really good at it when you give them that space. Assistant coaches, especially, are usually starving for like an opportunity to have a voice in the group. And having them do that with the group can also quell them from doing that, away from the coaches or undermining what the overall message is. I try and be as real and direct without being harsh, unless the group I know can handle it and needs that to move forward. Hey, here's what we got. Like it's the second period. The game is not over, right? And sometimes it's really easy to get ahead of ourselves. And you've gone through an experience with a group where, dude, we were up and we just fumbled that away because we got all loose. We started to feel like it was over, and the other team is energized to come get us now. So just keeping them focused on the task at hand, and giving them just those direct realities. And I try and keep it like a couple of words and repetitive, the same type of words over and over again, so that they know what to expect and they know, how to interpret what's being communicated to them in what's, usually a pretty stressful time.
That's another good piece is like being repetitive, but then also like slightly changing the message where they don't feel like they're getting bashed over the head with the exact same thing over and over again, but also having it sink in. Um, yeah, there was another mistake I've made early in my career of like one, either not being repetitive enough, or two, not adjusting the message slightly to keep it fresh enough where there's the engagement to it. Yeah,
I think we all do that. I think
that's a good point to bring up though. Like, but like it's so like a lot of these things like become so obvious to you that you forget from the opposite perspective. They have no idea. Or like for me, first thing I do every year is I've got a sheet of 122 terms. I'm probably not going to use all those terms throughout the year. If we get to all those, we're developing at an amazing clip,
hmm
ridiculously amazing clip. But just like even just getting on the same page where I say something and it's not going over half the team's head, and I don't even realize it went over half the team's head, and just because I'm making assumptions,
That's right.
or like they don't know what they don't know, especially with like high school kids, like they don't know jack. Like
That's right.
they could be the most amazing athletes, they're still kids.
That's right. And they mean well, but you're right. They're in their bubbles, and it's I'm with you on that. I try and be repetitive to the point that it's valuable for them to soak it in. I'm sometimes too repetitive, and I know it can wear on guys. In Minnesota, the landscape is unique, where we start the high school season in November. And we go till February, and if you're still playing in March, you're in the state tournament. So it's a sprint, and we don't get a lot of time with them outside of that. June and July, what we're recording this now in June, and we get a contact in June and July, summer waiver period, and now we're just going into the 4th of July break where we can't work with them for a week. So it's really only like 8 weeks in the off season we get with them. Then all of August, all of September, all of October, we can't work with them. So when we get them, it's like it's hot and heavy. It's a lot, and we're getting after it, and they're hungry for it. And we go 6 days a week. It's Sunday is mandatory per our league is a day off, and so Monday through Saturday we're doing something. And most of those days we're doing many somethings, right? It's a skate, it's a chalk talk, it's a skate, it's a lift, it's a game. So we're on the bus and we're traveling, or it's a home game, and we're ready to rock out. And there's some sort of obligation after. We've got a youth team coming in our locker room, and whatever. There's all this stuff, and so it seems to be effective to be repetitive, but I know by the time February, March rolls around, my voice has grown stale. That's why, I really try and work to be effective November and December and like over hold them accountable, overemphasize the details, and really prep them for when we get to January. This is your guys' room. This is your guys' team. Like I've given you all the things I think are the strategies, and I'm here as a reference. But you guys, I'm not on the ice. You guys got to lead. You guys got to make the plays, and you guys got to come to me with what's not working. And I really try and turn the locker room over to the group, and especially our seniors and our captains in January or midway through January at the latest, and let them tell us what they need to be successful.
I love that. I mean, it's tough because there's not enough time. It's the thing you're always fighting in any avenue of life, especially as a hockey coach and one where you're only a small piece of the pie, especially when kids are in so many different sports, get seems like all year round with something now.
Right.
But like, how do you get them what they need? But yeah, I love that. Lead as much as you can. I always say, you know, when like you got to try to keep that voice impactful. So when you actually do speak, it means something. It's yelling at your teams like yelling at your spouse. The more you do it, the less effective it becomes.
Right.
So probably don't raise your voice more than 2 or 3 times a year. Don't pull out the heavy handedness more than necessary.
Yep.
Like for me, I'm always trying to like almost like undercoach. Like you still have to like draw them along and all of that, but like how do you keep that voice fresh? So always a challenge. I can't see it never not being a challenge. But I'm also curious. Like you and I have both had the really great experience, and the dynamic of becoming head coaches, while the former head coach that was in our program slid not out of the program, but was still attached as an assistant coach.
That's
So
right.
would love to hear your 2 cents on that. For me, it's been amazing. Like, he's been super supportive. Like we were very different in our strengths, so it's been a cool dynamic of like, okay, I really can handle this. You can really handle that, and then being able to hand over the keys on different aspects has been awesome. But it doesn't come without its challenges.
No question. And mine was a shorter stint, and it was the first couple seasons. And when I first got my start, I intended on being my head coach. She was the head coach I played for. So I'm coaching in the program I grew up in, and I played for him. Ed Loisel, tremendous human being. He's still a teacher in the school, and still helps out and supports the program, whether it's some of our off-season stuff, captain's practice. But he had asked me to be an assistant, and of course, I was excited about that, and the opportunity and timing was right. So I jump in, and by the time the season starts, based on a couple of different factors, some health things for him and his dad, he was like, I'm gonna need time away during the season. I just know it. So I'd be more comfortable if you just were the head coach now. And part of our plan was me to be the assistant coach, and either become the head coach there or just gain that experience. So of course I said yes, and he stayed on and was the D coach and the assistant, and I became the decision maker. And it was awesome. It really was. He's just that good of a dude and that selfless of a leader, and empowered me, with, hey, if you make that decision, just know that might mean this, that, or the next thing, and kind of gave me some of that feedback, but always allowed me to make the decision, allowed me to fail forward, allowed me to kind of figure it out on the fly in my own way. And then, yeah, as his time exited, it was also the catalyst there was his son was coming into the locker room. And that was part of his strategy too, of, he knows his relationship with his son, and it's good, but it's like, I don't know if this room's big enough for both of us. And so I maybe need to get out of the room for my son to be able to have the best experience he could have. And so then he became a supporter in a different way from the stands and as a dad and a fan. And even to this day, he's a mentor. We get a cup of coffee and have a breakfast at least once during the season, and I'm like, what do you see? What do you feel? How can we be better? Right? And he tells me exactly, what he's thinking, and I deeply appreciate that about it.
It's that movement to the mentorship role, like heavy mentorship. Like it's always there, but like almost like not being a part of it in some way or fashion. Like you're not in the nitty gritty details. You're not studying the film anymore. When they get to that stage, it's like it's super helpful for the guys that are in that or they're currently stewarding the program.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's awesome. I'm curious. Obviously, relationship building for you is super critical. Um, everyone talks about it and developing those relationships, but I feel like no one ever gets specific to like what are maybe some hints and tricks and tips and how to go about it. Like grabbing coffee with key people, super critical of just like one thing. But like for me, always try to have at least a 2 second talk with the other head coach on the other side. Hopefully, get to know the names of the assistants. Still terrible at that, but trying to improve. We all have our things to
Yep.
get better at.
Yeah, 100%. And it's pretty standard that head coaches before the game, in our league, you have a handshake and a chat. There's the occasion, and it's just not forced because maybe there's bad blood, maybe it's just, is what it is. But more often than not, you're having that chat. It's usually really respectful. We actually are more talking about what challenges are you dealing with, or hey, have you had any of this, or whatever it is. And obviously, once we step on the bench, I want to win, they want to win, and so we're doing whatever we can to make that happen. And then when the game's over, again, things can transpire, but it's usually high levels of respect, and that's one of the cool things about, I don't have experiences coaching outside of Minnesota, but it's one of the things I really appreciate is that there's just a lot of love between the coaches, and we all are trying to do a thing for the kids and for our communities to give them opportunities and to give back to the game. So yeah, you try and steward those relationships, and you try and build with people because you never know where it's going to lead you. For example, one of the coaches, one of the head coaches of one of our section, not quite rivals, but strong opponents, and has been a dominant force in the section in Eden Prairie. Their head coach for the last few seasons decided to step down. And then I gave it some time, but I was like, is he stepping down because he doesn't want to coach anymore, or was that just not working? Was it head coach? I didn't know the details, and so I reached out and was like, "Hey, I've got a spot, and if you're looking to coach," and that led to a dinner and another conversation, and now he's jumped in with us. And so, I don't think that's the case if another head coach and I'd been, disrespectful to him all this time. And that's just one way of how it can lead to a positive outcome or a positive situation for your program by just being, a good dude and and having good respect to other coaches while you're going through the process of a season.
Just be a good person.
It
Wow, it's
seems seems to show up over
unbelievable.
and over again, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, like for me, I always joke. I'm like, I put so much on the internet. I'm like, if you wanted to really figure out all the intricacies of my team system, just dive into the newsletter. You'll figure it out
There.
eventually. Like it's not that obvious, but like, or it is that obvious. Like the secret is in the execution of it, like
That's
actually
right.
being able to do it. Because
I'm a big fan of Brandon Naurato, right? And Michigan, and he does, his stuff with the coaches site or wherever it is, and he puts this is what we do in the ozone. This is how we neutral zone regroup. This is how we did, and he gives out literally the drills, the blueprint, and even makes comments like, why would I give this out? Well, because at the end of the day, we're going to do hockey. Everyone's got our film. If they want to figure it out, they're going to figure it out. Reality is we got to execute. And if we execute, we believe in our stuff. So I'm with you. I don't, there's nothing to hide. Hockey's not that complex. We can draw it up however we want, but at the end of the day, the nets are inside the dots. So you better protect that middle space, and you better make decisions according to how the lines and the rules are. And that's really what it boils down to.
yeah. So there was one element in the show particular that really stuck out to me and something that I really connected with. Like I really don't get that mad at my team. I'm like, they're high schoolers. Like it's going to be what it's going to be. I'm just going to try to help them make better decisions than what they probably would have made otherwise, or help them, once they make that mistake. But the one time I always get really upset with my team is when they're not looking out for each other. Like that's when I lose it. Like if we got one player on the team who may be a space cadet for God forbid, but like you still have to look out for your guys. Um, and so there was one where you're like kind of identifying what are the key things. Like we want to work hard, we want to be tough, and we want to take care of each other. And I'm like that's like the ultimate. Like if we could just get everyone to take care of each other, whether you like them or not, you don't have to be best buddies, but you still need to be, the guy back to back in the foxhole taking care of business.
And we probably won't be best buddies, at least not all of us. And some of the boys will be real tight, and some of the guys will have to learn to tolerate each other. But we've committed to a group experience, we've committed to a team, and we need to put, our self-interest aside at times and commit to it. And it's been said before, and I'm a big believer in it. The team's going to be as strong as the weakest link or links, and so we got to look out for those guys. I'm constantly pushing on our very best players to be patient and tolerant of those that are maybe at the other end of the spectrum, the fourth line, the sixth and seventh D guy. Like we need those guys. We at the very least need them to show up and give it to us every day at practice. So it doesn't help if you're being disrespectful, if you're leaving them behind or it just, not including them. Those are the guys you really need to lean in on. The other guys, they're getting the love, they're getting the minutes, they're in the experience in the way most guys want to be. So they probably don't need that love as much. But yeah, if the group isn't looking after each other, to me, failure is inevitable.
A cohesive group will go a lot further on garbage tactics and a lot of other dysfunction, but as long as they're united, they will go a lot further than a team that may have the best ideas and just doesn't have that level of unity. Like it's super powerful. So, yeah.
No
And the other
doubt.
piece of like, we'll have to tolerate, like, I don't know about you, but we're all one of 7 or 8 billion people on the earth. Like, we're going to run into each other.
That's right.
Guarantee you're not going to be best buddies with 8 billion people. Like, we at least have to tolerate each other.
Totally. I read a quote or a phrase not too long ago. It kind of relates to this because sometimes the challenge is like, guys get good, hungry for a goal or their stats or they're worried about their points or they're worried about, how they're going to get their commitment or they're going to get their junior opportunity. And the quote was, I might butcher it, but it was something to the effect of, it's amazing what can be accomplished when nobody cares who gets the credit. And I think that's ultimately, what my job is to get the guys to buy in on like, who cares who scores the goal? Like as long as it's the guy in our jersey on our team and it goes up on our side of the scoreboard, we should be celebrating more for when our buddy scores than when we score. And if we get that type of experience, we're all going to eat. And we're gonna have a lot of fun. We're going to get to where we're trying to go, after this league, if that's the goals and aspirations we have to keep playing. So. I've really gravitated to that phrase the last couple of months in this summer and been stewing on it. So I felt like I had to share that one with you.
No, I love that. I've got my notepad of like anytime I hear a great quote, or you just like someone just randomly spew something out, like ambition secondary to investment. Like you start getting invested,
Mm.
suddenly your ambition might follow. Obnoxious communication. Like I don't know how many. Your team might be better than mine, but the kids just don't talk enough, whether it be before, during, or after shifts. So I'm like, we need more obnoxious communicators. Like you need to start annoying each other, or at least annoying the coaches with like, please shut up. Um,
It's
Again,
it's
unity.
Here's what's interesting to me. This is something I've picked up on because I had the privileged opportunity to work with, throughout the 12-month calendar year, kids of all ages, whether it's through training programs or what we in Minnesota call AAA hockey, which is really just more spring and summer off-season hockey. Um, when the kids are young, the boys, they talk. The squirts, and even the peewees. I mean, they are chatterboxes. I can get them to communicate on the ice or encourage them to do it, and they'll do it. They'll walk into the rink, into the locker room, out onto the ice, and start chatting with you. Something happens when they get to U14 and they all of a sudden like, whether it's the puberty process or whatnot, they start to become more mute. And then by the time they get into high school, they're like dead quiet. And it's like you used to be the most communicative kid I ever met, and now you're like worried about being cool or like worried you're going to say the wrong thing when you didn't used to care. And what's interesting to me is girls are almost the exact opposite. Like when I coach a U8, U10, and sometimes U12, but U12 is kind of that threshold girl, they're mutes. They don't really talk. They'll talk to each other, right? But they won't really talk to me and they won't really engage like that. But something happens when they get to U14 in high school, they communicate like crazy. Like I'll walk in the rink for our practice and we have a two sheet, set up at our arena and the girls will be on one rink and the boys will be on the other. And the girls will be on the ice and I just walk by and they'll stop mid drill. Hey coach, start waving to me and communicating. And it's like that same kid wouldn't even talk to me when I was coaching them on the ice just a few short years ago. So yeah, I think communication is anytime I get a guy on our team communicating, I'm screaming to the rest of the guys, you hear that? Let's go. He's communicating. I love that. And I'm just trying to fan the flame on that so they feel like I should do more of that because I think that's an important skill that, most of the guys don't have in spades.
Well, talk about a skill that they may or may not have, but like the skill as coaches that we can have is the skill of pushing positivity and like catching them doing something good and then showing that as an example, like do more of that rather than yelling at them to talk more and they never do. Like let's get them seeing their teammate doing it. You could be just like that guy.
That's
Be a
right.
cool guy. That is the cool thing. Cause to your point, like they want to be the cool person or like they don't want to make the mistake. They don't want to say the stupid thing. Um, which taken too far really impacts their ability to get better,
That's right.
which then
And
is like a catch 22 on the spiral down.
100%. And what I've found to be successful with our guys, and this goes into even our youth program too, but particularly our high school guys, is we really try and like in front of the group praise. Like if an individual does something, let's praise. Now, if it's a group conversation, we can talk and be real and direct, like mentioned before. But if it's an individual, like guy just had a turnover, guy just, made a big mistake. Let's not call him out in front of the group. We're watching group video, we're watching praise. We're trying to really dig into that. In the past, when I've done the opposite and highlight your mistakes in front of the group, it feels like it's a major setback. Trust gets destroyed. All of a sudden, that player is afraid to make mistakes. Just a moment before that, I'm saying we should fail forward. We can make mistakes. It's okay to. Then the mistake happens, and in front of the group, they're getting embarrassed. So we try and, like I said, in front of the group, praise, and then, hey, come over here real quick. And just to that player, hey, on that play, remember, we're trying to work on you doing this, and then just individually giving that corrective feedback seems to be way more accepted to the boys in this kind of whether it's generation or just the type of kids I'm coaching these days.
No, that's exactly it. It's that praise in public, criticize behind closed doors, or have that conversation. Um, you've probably run into this too, where like kids will sometimes get frustrated with their teammates about like either they're making a mistake or making the same mistake, and it's like, coach, what's going? Like they keep doing them. Meanwhile, like, yeah, I've been talking with this guy about this for a long time, but I'm not going to do it in front of you and the other,
That's
part of the
right.
team here. Like, let's have respect for some personal boundaries and like working through things and that psychological safety net that they need to have. But yeah, it's always hilarious when it's like, yeah, we've been talking about this, we're going to continue to work on it, or like
A lot
everyone's
of
can't be treated
times
the same, but they're each treated how they need to be treated.
A lot of times that guy's done something that I already have in my head that I'm like, well, we're going to talk about this. And maybe they'll say like, coach, like, he's got to get that. I'm like, hey, I'm working with him. But since you want to talk, I noticed, and then I'll start diving into something like for them. And they're like, oh, shoot, now I open that door. And it's like, yeah, you want to talk about coaching a guy. I'm going to coach you. And then I'll skate over, or I'll walk over and go hammer some stuff out with him. So I think it tries to just, again, get them to stay focused on their own bobber. Like you're not perfect, you're growing, and where he's at is where he's at, and I'm going to help him, and you should too work on the things he needs to work on, but don't focus on his flaws. Focus on the things he brings, and let us coaches kind of dig into how we can help him, overcome the things that he's not, polished in yet.
Yeah, well, I like the little phrase you used there. Focus on your bobber.
That's right.
Good fishing analogy.
Yeah, that's right. Don't look at mine. I got it.
Yeah. Um, so another thing that I think is really big, and this is kind of the last big box I have that really want to drill down into, just like a lot of the kids, especially in the high school, as they're transitioning, right? They're learning their bodies go through enormous change. Um, you know, one through puberty, two throwing on weight, growing, and the coordination issues that come with that. Um, like there's a book, and I have it back there somewhere, by Chris Bosch, and he had this element in that book that really stuck out to me was like the best time to think about like extending your career an extra X amount of years is not when like your body's starting to fail you or like you're
Mm.
starting to pile up injuries. It's like well before that. Um, and I know you're pretty passionate about diet, exercise, and respecting your body. So I'm curious your 2 cents on all of that.
Well, I think that's spot on. The challenge is getting a young mind to be forward thinking like that and to consider what it will be like down the road. And so oftentimes we want to learn from our own mistakes, which of course we should. But it's really helpful to fast track the process of success or being successful when we can learn from other people's mistakes and their successes, right? And so yeah, if we can, help a guy learn how to prehab, how to eat right, how to get the corrective rehab. A lot of this comes down to what we were talking about before, communication. And if they can come to us with what they're dealing with, what feels good, what doesn't, that helps to set them on the right path. But you're also just trying to be, in general, communicative on these are the things that are really important even though you can get away with, eating at McDonald's today, that's going to cost you down the road, and that's going to hurt you when you're eating just that. You need to try and get, source good foods and good details in your nutrition, and hydration. Water should be your number one option. You should be drinking that more than the sodas. If we're trying to be real and serious and competitive, that's not what you want. I always use the expression, an airplane or a jet engine needs jet fuel. And so if you just put regular unleaded in there, it's not going to operate. And athletes need athletic nutrition. We need the right stuff. We're not just regular dudes going through a day. And in which case, whatever, you still should probably eat well, but it's probably not going to show up as often or as prevalent when you're, choosing some of these other foods or some of these other hydration nutrition options. And so you're just really trying to create a foundation of this is important because again, they're not forward thinking, so they're going to need to learn a little bit of it on their own. And then you do get your rare one, two, whatever it is, kids that are real mature and really get it and really dive into it. And when you get a couple of those, that can spread through the locker room in a positive way too, where other guys jump on and they're really trying to learn about that stuff. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do that. Well, that supplement's no good. Whatever. You start you're figuring it out, and you're going to figure that out through the process of just getting messy and doing it.
Yeah, make someone else's hindsight your insight. I just always a fan of that. Or like for me, I'm always trying to get the seniors to talk about their experiences and maybe some of the regrets or some of the great choices they made and feed that back as far as possible.
Yeah, you had a great blog about that the other day. It was great talking about some of the senior stuff, and that it just brought me to what our seniors typically talk about at our end of year banquet. We do all this stuff, but we do a senior panel where we have all the seniors kind of sit on stage at a local establishment that has a nice nighttime venue place that allows us to do all that. And at the Shakopee Bowl, I'll give them some love. They do a great job for all of our youth sports. But when we're there, the seniors, I have a set of questions that I ask them. If you could go back to your former self in your rookie season, what would you tell yourself? And really, what I'm trying to do is just get them to open up about what are you going to tell these guys that are sitting here that still have time on the clock, that still have eligibility, and how can you get them to really dig in? And one of the most mature guys I've ever had the privilege of coaching, Mason Vogel was one of our captains, but a fourth line guy and was a third line guy his junior year, and then fourth line guy his senior year, just because the team got better. And but unbelievably selfless, glue guy. We don't accomplish the conference championships we had the last couple of years without a dude like him in our room and a part of our team. But one of his final messages to the group was talk to everybody. You think you know, but you don't know who your best friend could be across the room and you never talk to him. It doesn't always have to be a hockey conversation. Maybe you guys like something else. Maybe all of a sudden you start hanging out and you find out, we could be best buddies. And, again, that's just, back to the point, these guys can learn a lot from the guys who have gone through it, and are given that hindsight to them.
Yeah, and as frequently and as often, yeah, and to your point, like sooner or later, you're gonna let the leaders lead and turn the team over as much as you can, and it's great. Um, I mean, obviously, through this conversation, is there anything that's propped up in your mind? I mean, I feel like at this point, we've had so many good one-liners. You might as well throw out a few other ones. Like for me, I always loved a dog in the hunt doesn't know he has fleas. Like you got to be focused, or like don't
Mm,
blink. Like let's focus. No blinking.
I love that. That's great. Yeah. Um, God, you got me stuck now. A couple of good one-liners. Here's one. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. And so obviously it doesn't always apply, but the premise is, we can't show up to practice and then show up to the game and expect it to just, all of a sudden we're going to turn it on. Now there's the idea of gamers and guys are going to be better in those regards, but we want to have a consistency about how we do things. And so, yeah, if we're going to be sloppy at home and we're not going to clean our bedroom, then our locker room's going to be sloppy. If our locker room's going to be sloppy, our mind's going to be cluttered. If our mind's going to be cluttered, we're going to go out there in front of, one, two, three, five, 10,000, whatever it is, and we're going to make failures. We're going to make mistakes. Right? As I understand it, the Navy SEALs, they do a great job of like before they go on mission. Everything good at home? Are you worried about finances? Are you worried about your family? Are you worried about your wife? Is everything taken care of? We can't have you distracted 1 second when we go on this mission. For them, it's life and death. For us, it's just a win or a loss, so it's not as grave. But keeping everything tight and focused allows them to go into those missions and allows us as a team to go into those games, clear-minded and ready to execute when the opportunities are given. So I guess would I spin that out of the way you do anything is the way you do everything.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Well, this has been great having two high school coaches trying to make a difference in people who are going through some serious impressionable times, big physical and social changes, and learning to lead their own lives more and more. So, um, Simon, if you get, geez, yes, Mr. Simon, Calvin Simon.
People call me
If
Simon all the time. I'm a guy with two first names, so I don't
it's
take
like
any
Ricky
offense
Bobby,
to that. That's right.
do you even know
Exactly.
what to do with your hands?
I don't. I exit. What do I do with the? I don't know, brown cow.
Hey, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if you had anything else, let's talk about it. But no, I really appreciate the time and the expertise. Like, I think any high school coach probably pull up this episode and throw it on their playlist because there's so many little details that we got into, whether it be like how do you handle relationship with other coaches, some of the realities of messing with high school kids, which is like, how do you get them out of the shell of like wanting to be the cool kids and actually getting to a point where, okay, you can actually learn and grow and all the little details that, go on outside of the rink that make their way into the rink and how we can have such a great impact.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my final message, I guess, would be any coach that's listening, you know, do it from the heart. Uh, you don't have to do what I do. You don't have to say what I say. Say what you say. Do what you do. But make it genuine. Make it real. Do it because you care about the kids, about the team, about the program. And we're all going to make mistakes. But if you're centered in that, doing it for the right things and you have your heart in the right place, you're going to make an impact on these kids. And at some point, we hang them up. The game comes to a close for all of us, even if you wore 99 and you were the greatest to ever play, and you have a Hall of Fame, type of career, or you never make it that far. I always say all roads lead to beer league or men's league, and so
So true.
that's really the goal is to try and get these guys to just love the game as long as they possibly can. Usually, I'm sure you're the same. I get a lot of invites to grad parties, and that feels like, it's great and obvious and whatnot. But I always tell our coaches, we're gonna get the grad party invites, but we'll know in 5 or 10 years if we made a real impact on these guys and on their hearts if we're getting invitations to their weddings. And
Yeah.
so that really to me is the goal is how can I obviously help them do some hockey, How can I help them be a better person? How can I make an impact that they want to include me in their life in a special moment like that?
Beautiful. Calvin, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Greg, thanks for having me. Thanks for all you do for hockey, man.
That concludes this week's episode. Thanks for joining us here at Hockey IQ. If you haven't already, take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and drop a review. If you want to be a great teammate, even recommend us to a friend. You can follow us at Hockey's Arsenal on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the website, hockeysarsenal.com, where you can subscribe to the weekly newsletter. You won't regret it. Catch your buttes here next week for a brand new episode.